Welcome to Audio Fundamentals. This lecture will be about mixing consoles. You might be wondering why we're looking at an analog console on the screen. It's because learning about how signal goes from musicians and your analog sound into a computer through a mixing board is a good way to learn before you hop on software like Pro Tools to do a tracking session, so you understand the choices in the order of operations and how to use a mixer. So why do we need a mixer? It's basically so you can get sounds from the control room into however you're mixing it. In this case, it'll be a computer or a laptop. So you use a mixer to route signals. So if you have and maybe you're singing or playing guitar or an entire band, you can have that happening at the same time, or you can do one thing at a time and use a mixer to bring the signals in. Some of the things that you're going to be connecting to your mixer are your laptop or computer, an analog to digital converter somehow to get the sound from your analog instruments or your voice into the computer in a digital way. Headphones, or if you want to use a headphone distribution amp, this allows more than one person to have headphones. If you're playing keyboards, you want to use MIDI, which lets you change the sound of the keyboard. Microphones, and if you're using instruments that use a 1/4-inch plug, such as a guitar, you would probably need a DI box, which is we'll go over it later, but it matches the signal, the low signal from your guitar into line level so that the computer can read that signal. So let's talk about multi-tracking. What is multi-tracking? It's recording several instruments at once. So a lot of times when you're recording a band, it sounds better when you're recording together. And there's things you'll learn in this class about recording in one space or separating the sound so that you get some separation between the instruments when you're recording, which gives you more control when you're editing. So you record your basic song and then you can add parts to it. For example, adding vocals, adding harmonies, fixing things. So those are called overdubs, and then or overdubbing. And then another method is you can record tracks using MIDI information, which is information coming from a keyboard, and so that you could use that for your background stuff. That's how hip hop is recorded, using loops or other sounds that are recorded as MIDI information. Adding live tracks later in hip hop, that would be vocals mostly. So when I show you the mixer in a little bit here, we'll be talking about the channels. Mixers, even though they look complicated, you really only have to learn one channel of things, and the rest are just duplicates. And then we'll be going over where you can plug in a mic or a guitar for each track, and then on usually the bottom of the mixer where the volume and panning and things are located on the mixer. You can also, in the digital world, you can combine instruments onto one track, or you can record an entire orchestra, for example, using one set of microphones over the head of the conductor. That's done a lot for surround sound. So you can combine a bunch of instruments onto one track. The disadvantage of that is in the mixing stage, you can't separate instruments once you've done that. So for recording, this is really important. You're not mixing at this stage. Recording, you want to get the best signal possible. To get the best signal possible, you want to get the track at the highest level without distortion. And there's always you're going to see meters on these mixers, whether it's analog or digital, or whether you're using software. When you're recording, you need to leave headroom or space so that the signal does not distort. And in general, it's between 6 and 12 decibels of headroom to avoid distortion. And how do you know? You just have to do a practice take and see how much headroom you need. If you have something super loud, like drums, or a really loud singer or guitar solo, you might need more headroom because the guitar might be going very loud and then softer. If you have a more even sound, like a cymbal, you can probably set it at around 6 decibels for headroom. So doing a sound check and checking the microphones, making sure that your signal doesn't clip, is really important to take the time to do that properly. So monitoring, that's about listening to your tracks while you're recording, and you need to have some way to listen to those, especially when you're playing back. And the best way to do that is with a headphone input somewhere. And we'll look at what the headphone distribution amps look like, or the single headphone input. So you can adjust the monitor mix while you're recording. For example, maybe if you're singing, you want your instruments to be lower at that time so you can hear them, but you can hear your voice louder. Or maybe you're doing a guitar solo and you want to make sure that channel is loud. Also, we'll be talking about metronomes in this class, and having a click track which keeps you on the beat of the song. And you'll hear those in the headphones. So without the headphones, there's no way to hear the click track. And then finally, in the control room where you're recording, you're tracking with your mixer, you'd want to have a monitor mix sent in there so you can hear on the speakers. So once you do your tracking, everybody recorded, you're going to be adding to that, and that's called overdubbing. And you can see the slide, but basically I use it to add tracks. For example, I'll do the rhythm section, like I'll do drums, keyboard, bass, first playing together. And that's nice because, for example, keyboards, you can go right into your computer using MIDI information, and then bass, guitar, and drums, you can do all that in a pretty small space, and then go back and start adding vocals, horns, harmonies, other things like that, guitars. So that's how I use overdubbing. When I'm doing movies, overdubbing I use a lot to add sound effects, other background sounds, changing things in the dialogue, which is ADR, which is redoing things in the script that were messed up for some reason during the live recording. So overdubbing is really important, and it's going to be important to learn how to use your mixer and then create a mix so that whoever's recording can hear back what was previously recorded and then add to it. Mix down. So once you have all of the recorded sounds, then you don't have any more to add. You'll be doing mix down, and this is in post-production, in audio and in film, where you're going to add effects. You're going to blend the sound so that it becomes a stereo or surround sound mix. And this is where you're going to be changing the volumes, adding effects, and then doing a master mix, and then finally bouncing out to stereo or surround. I put a plugin there called Isotope, which is the most common mastering plugin. So we'll be learning more about that as the class rolls through. So in order to teach about signal flow, let's talk about analog mixers. I'm going to use Mackie because it's a simple workflow, and that's the one that I learned on. And it starts at the top with mic pre's, and then it goes to auxiliary sends. And the auxiliary sends, the mic pre's are basically how the volume of the mic coming in. So that depends on how loud the sound is coming in. And you'll be learning how to, you always have to set mic pre's, whether you're using an analog mixer or digital. So it's about leaving that headroom so that the signal doesn't clip, but having a good strong signal while you're recording. So that's the mic pre's. The auxiliary sends are in the next row down, and I'm going to show you a mixer and then point to all of this, but that's where you can add plugins, and you can send the sound to monitor speakers and to headphones. Equalization, I'm not going to teach equalization in this lesson other than just to say there are equalizers in these mixers, and generally you're going to use them in post, so I don't need to go over them right now, but since there's knobs on the mixer, we'll be going over what those represent, and mostly they're to change frequencies of sound that you have recorded. But we'll go over that later. There's insert points. These are to either plug in instruments or an external processing device, like if you have a recorder, an extra reverb, something like that. And you'll be using 1/4-inch cables, a TS or TRS cable, whether it's and that depends whether it's mono or stereo signal. So if you have a guitar, for example, you'll have a TS cable plugged into an insert point to get that sound in. And then I'll show you where that is in a minute. In most mixers, there's also a dynamic section, which gives you these types of plugins. And we'll be learning these plugins when we talk about EQ and reverb compression and the different types of plugins to change the sound that you've recorded. There's always a way to mix for your headphones or for monitors, and so you can route signals to your headphones, and I'll show you where that is. The big change in the last few years has been digital consoles. I'm showing one here that's very common by Mackie, where actually there's an iPad that you can take out and run around the room and mix digitally. So you can see in this mixer, there's a lot of things that are the same in the analog as far as where you plug your mics in, guitars, the mic pre's, but then everything else is done on the iPad so that you can save your settings and you can add EQs, you can add instruments. It's very powerful and you can be mobile. Now, automation is something I use mostly in post, where a lot of times I'm using it to automate the volume changes, pan changes, sometimes effects. So we'll learn about that later. And we'll be learning these modes in automation, but it's basically how to record those things that you want to be automated. And the way I learned it, it's like a imaginary guy standing on your buttons on your mixer operating it for you. You can have the computer do that in automation, so it's actually pretty simple. So what I wanted to do is just show you some of the stuff. So let's look at some of these mixers. Here's the Mackie VLZ 1202. There we go. So at the top we have a place to plug in a microphone. So this is the simplest mixer, is what most people learn on. This is your like basic hammer for audio. So you can plug in your mic here, or for example a guitar right here into the 1/4-inch. And then the next button is called low cut, 75 hertz. So if you have something really low in the background like a kick drum or something and you don't want that coming to the channel, you can hit the low cut button. If not, just leave it in the up position. This is your mic pre, or the gain stage. You would be raising this until you get, and then you have to sing or play your sound that you're going to record into this channel until you leave enough headroom here. What you don't want is this, while you're recording, going yellow and red. Definitely not red. So you want it to stay in the green at the loudest sound. If you want a very strong signal, what you don't want to do is have it way down here, have a weak signal, because then when you do effects, it's going to be hard to work with. These are your auxiliary channels. So if you're sending sound to, let's say the first row is headphones, so you can pick how much of each person's signal is going to your headphones. The second one could be your monitor mix, so how much sound is going to your monitors in your control room. And here's the master for the auxiliary. And they're labeled so you can see like these are a separate output here. The next is your EQ. So while you're recording, usually I use this in live sound. So if I'm recording, let's say I have kick drum on channel 1, I would be taking this 80 hertz, which is the low, mids, and highs, taking the 80 hertz and making that higher. If I have vocals, I might raise the mids a little bit. So these are high, mids, and lows. So the high is 12K boost, and then mids look like 2.5K, and then lows are 80 hertz. Then you have pan, which is basically, do you want the sound to be left or right? And live sound is something where if you don't want everything to come equally through the left and right speaker, you can change it to go more left or more right. The mute button is just you press it and that channel is muted. You don't hear it. The solo is opposite. When you press solo, you'll only hear this channel. And then this is the main level for that channel, which U is unity. When you're changing the mic gain, make sure these are all at unity, and then work with the microphone and see how much level you get. I want to show you a couple other things here before I show you a more complicated mixer. So there's places here to plug in things for aux, so your headphone amplifier, your monitors for your control room, your main speakers, left and right. These over here, the line-ins I usually use for guitars and keyboards. This is interesting, tape in and out. I usually use that to go from an iPod into this, so I can have some like sound in between performing if I'm using it in a live performance. So let's go to, well, I can show you this too, the back of this mixer. This is where your speakers would be coming out. And then this is some channel inserts. So if you need to put in, let's say, a reverb unit or something like that, and you have control room speakers, so you can have headphone distribution amps. So there's plenty of plugs between the front and the back of these to have a big studio happening. So if I look at something a little bit more complicating, let's see. All right, there we go. Let's look at a 1402 because there's faders here. So this is what I have usually with me all the time. I like this one because at the bottom you have the faders. So I bring the faders up to unity, plug in a microphone, play some sound, use the gain, make sure that I have some headroom. So I go up to right here just around 7, my loudest sound, and then send that to my control room and my headphones, EQ if I want, pan if I want, and then move to the next channel. So in this mixer there are 6 inputs here, and plus you have 4 more that are mono or stereo 1/4-inch plugs where you can plug in more keyboards, guitars, things like that. The rest of the mixer is exactly the same that I showed you before. And the back of this just has basically more inserts. So once you learn how to use a mixer and the basics, you just get more options. And for example, for a lot of times when I do a big band with horns and things, I'll need a bigger mixer because I have a lot of horns. But it's basically the same signal flow, it's just now I have 16 channels. And these live boards, the difference also is you have a lot more choices in the back, so you can have a lot more headphones or monitor mixes, and you can go record your performance, things like that you'd need for live sound. So that's a little bit about analog mixers. I wanted to show you a little bit about headphone amplifiers. They have very simple ones that are under $100. This one has a way to listen to 4 headphones at the same time, which is really awesome. And let's see. This is what I usually use in my studio, an 8-channel headphone amplifier, because that's about how many I record at the same time. And let's see if I can get to it. Wanted to show you the back of this, how it plugs in, but it's not working, so let's do it from here. Okay, we can see it from here. So on these mixers, there's a place to plug in your headphones and then the volumes. On the larger mixers, you have, let's go into this one. You can monitor the level here. You plug your headphones in, and then in the back you have XLR and 1/4 inch to plug into whatever else is in your studio. So I have mine plugged into my analog digital converter, and I can listen to 8 at the same time. So that's basically, but it's very important to have some sort of headphone amplifier, because otherwise you can only listen yourself, which is fine if you're just recording yourself. But whenever you get at least one other person, you need some type of way to listen to headphones together while you're recording. Next thing I want to show you is about headphones. I would never recommend mixing on, for example, Apple earbuds. You need headphones that are designed to hear the entire frequency range, and those run about $100 to $150 if you're getting a professional set of headphones. This is just a common one, Audio-Technica, but there's a lot of brands, and in all of these things I'm showing you, there's a lot of brands, and it's really personal preference, but just make sure you get one that you like and that is comfortable and that covers the full range of sound. This is something I wanted to show you on how simple a studio can be and still be awesome. This is Shure's MVI. There's another even simpler device called the X2U. What this is, it's actually a whole studio. So you can plug in a microphone and a headphone into this, and it has a USB port, so you can go into your computer. And what you do with this is, this becomes your analog to digital converter. You can sing and play guitar and listen to your headphones and plug it into your computer and get your sound into your audio software. So this is a really simple device, but what it does is it lets you plug in any microphone and change the signal to USB into your computer. So you can get a whole studio for $129. What it doesn't do is it doesn't have multi-headphones in this case, but it's great for one at a time. Another thing that's really, really important in setting up a studio, especially in a home studio, is controlling the signal coming into your house. And that's done with a power conditioner. What you don't want is crackling, signal variations, signal spikes. All those things will cause problems in your recording. And if there's something serious like a storm, you could actually blow out equipment. So for a very low price, you can have a power conditioner. And all this is you plug in your stuff in there and it protects it and then evens out the signal. I have one that with a digital readout in front, a little bit more expensive, but I have, I think, 12 plugs in the back of mine, and it saved my equipment for the last 20 years. So it's been, I wouldn't do recording without a power conditioner for sure. So one of the things I'd recommend that you do is go look at some of the stuff online. Mackie.com is one of those good websites that has just a ton of information. You can learn about analog and digital mixers. You can actually learn about all the products I talked about. But and we'll be going through these in the class, but they have really good videos and information on all of this stuff so you can keep learning and go into more of what I talked about. And one last thing that I didn't show you is this is actually what I use for live mixing. Is the same mixer I've just showed you, but it has a section for EQ. So like say I want to have brighter vocals, I can work with this section, which is a graphic equalizer, and then it has effects. So I can add reverb to channels that I sing, things like that. So this type of mixer is for live sound, fantastic tool for an analog mixer. And that's my lesson on mixers and signal flow. I hope that complements the other materials that you are looking at in this class. And that concludes my lesson on mixers.